This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, Shawn, take it away.
All right. So thanks to everybody for joining us. Again, I'd encourage you to use your webcams. We started a policy at CBB where I work, come as you are, no judgment zone policy. In other words, I don't want to go 3 months without, 2 or 3 months without seeing people's faces. So I told the company, I don't care if you're in your pajamas or there's a kid drooling all over you or you got a dog, in your lap. It just makes it a more human experience, and I think we're all needing as much of that as we can get these days. So appreciate you being here. Where this topic really got started for me personally, I was in New York City. When my kids turn 10 years old, we do a daddy kid trip. And all the kids have wanted to go to New York City. So at the beginning of March, I was in New York City with my daughter Bethany, and then we went from New York City. We did the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, all that stuff, and then we went to Lake Placid skiing. And when I left home, I think there were like 4 cases in the state of New York. So I thought, oh, this, we should be all right. I mean, I know something's going on, but 20 million people and 4 cases, it's not really all that worried. When we were there is when the New Rochelle hotspot started to take off, and obviously I was watching that very closely and where are these cases occurring. And it occurred to me when I was there that, man, when this thing hits Manhattan, it's going to be a problem because you're all over you're all, on top of each other, right? On the subway and just whatever you do, going to a wall, CVS, and then, just all kinds of people. And we got back, and then after they put in the shelter in place at home policies here in Missouri, I saw something on Twitter, and it was a parody site for Mayor De Blasio, and it basically said, hey, New York City is going to like close a bunch of streets and let people walk. And without realizing it was a parody site, I was excited. I said, man, that's genius, right? So here's the deal. We have transportation infrastructure. We have trillions of dollars of transportation infrastructure in the United States of America that right now we don't need for cars, because I saw a report from Itiris this morning that volumes in March are down about 35% compared to what they were last March, and that's only part of the month. And places like Italy, the volumes are down 50 to 60%. So we don't need all that capacity. What we do need capacity is for people to be able, with all these shelter-in-place orders. I'll tell you what, I can't stay inside my house for 2 months, right? I'll go crazy. We need the opportunity for people to get outside and but to do it safely, right? So we're seeing it in St. Louis with the parks, that people are trying to get outside and they're going to the parks and there's too many people and too close to spaces. So just this morning, they closed all of the streets in St. Louis parks to try to get people to give more space for people to spread out, because we have all that real estate. So I started kind of researching, as a transportation profession, and this is we'll come back to this, but I want you to think of this as we go. As a transportation profession, what new challenges are we facing as a society through these various shelter in place and all the things, this virtual world that we're in? What resources do we have as a profession, and then what potential solutions are out there? So if you want to go to the next one, and so we got a little PowerPoint, and it's just to maybe introduce the topic, but what I really hope that this turns into is a brainstorm session. Pam, I don't know if you're taking notes or if we've got a note taker.
I'm recording it.
Oh, recording. Okay. So if we can come up, can we brainstorm and come up with like 2 or 3 things that are going to like really help our communities get through this, right? So what's the next big idea? And we've got a lot of really smart people here on the call and in the profession that, in any adversity, there's opportunity. So what opportunities are out there that we're just haven't thought of yet? So on this slide, this is just hey, we own part of this problem, right? So why is COVID-19 spreading? A lot of it's because of transportation. It's because people traveling. And we even see that. We've got states putting checkpoints right now where they're stopping people coming into their state and imposing quarantines if you're from another part of the country. And that's all to try to stop the spread. If you go to the next slide, At the same time, we're part of the solution, right? So if you look at, this is spreading because people are traveling. We need the transportation network to be part of the solution on this. And if for freight, if nothing else, right? I don't know how many of you have been to the grocery store or tried to order something online, and trying to get supplies. I mean, we're really stressing out our freight system in the country. So that's an example where the transportation network is a big part of the solution to getting us through this. Go to the next one. It's creating some interesting new problems, and this shows some of the new things that are coming to play. So you go to restaurants in a lot of states, will have, you can't dine in. You have to go through drive-through. Well, guess what? Truckers can't fit through the drive-through window. So McDonald's has had to try to figure out, okay, truckers are important. We just saw that in the previous slide. We need to just be able to, truckers got to eat, right? They can't come in the restaurant. So how do we, as a company, how do we service those trucking customers that need to eat, that can't come through the drive-through and they can't come into our store? Something that those from my generation might get a kick out of, and I kind of laughed. The big thing, and I met my wife cruising, right? So we cruise up and down the strip. That was the thing. You drive up down Main Street. I see a smile there, right? Some people remember that. That kind of got away because the millennials don't want to drive. My son, and it's actually happening. So yesterday, one of my daughters, she's in 8th grade, one of her classmates had a birthday, so they did a parade in front of her house to say happy birthday, right? So they got all the other 8th graders in a line with their parents or whoever driving them and went by their house. And my son is wanting to go out, and again, different cars, so they're social distancing, but he's like, they just want to go drive around and follow each other around. So in Boonville, Missouri, cruising's a thing. So driving up and down the strip is the way to socialize. So maybe that's coming back a little bit. So and then another one, Hillsboro is trying to set up a testing site, and the residents are freaked out because people are going to be driving by, and so how do you set up these sites and not worry about local communities and bringing these other people in? So those are just some ideas of new problems that are emerging out of this. Go to the next slide. 3 of these pictures I got from one of the ITE board members, Jen Melzer, up in Calgary. And Calgary has, and I thought took a very courageous and a very strong leadership, and they are changing their streets. They're putting road diets in on a temporary basis, closing some streets to do what I was talking about in New York City. And that's actually provide space that's not needed for cars right now because traffic volumes are down, and actually provide that for people to get out of their houses and to have a safe environment to get outside and to walk around and get exercise and that kind of thing. So these are some pictures from that. Pretty simple to implement, pretty cost effective, but this is a solution that, again, this was just last weekend, was put in place to provide opportunities for people. And then the one shows, it's got the police tape, I guess. That was St. Louis's idea of trying to close the roads for parks and open that space up for people. If you go to the next one. A bunch of cities having ideas for, this gets back to, we want to help small businesses to get through this. Restaurants, a lot of states have gotten rid of dine-in parking. So so what do you do with the mom and pop restaurant that now wants to do takeout but doesn't have a drive-through window? Well, what some cities are doing is taking that parking because it's not needed anyways and creating basically drive-through lanes, pickup lanes, drive-through lanes for these local restaurants. Again, in my mind, a pretty brilliant idea, pretty brilliant solution of being able to help. People need to get food. We want to keep the businesses afloat. We don't need all this parking because people aren't driving into downtown. Walker Consultants is one, and I give them kudos. They put out some information on how to convert a parking garage to a testing site, right? So if we want to have a testing site, an outdoor testing site. So a lot of cities have been doing this. I saw this in St. Paul. We've seen it in Austin and a number of cities. They're doing these kind of parking solutions. And go to the next one, Pam. And then there's some other ones. People trying to put their push buttons on automated, so people don't have to push the buttons, because that's potential hazard, people looking at and trying to shorten their cycle lengths. Again, we don't need the longer cycle lengths for cars, and it helps, reduce waiting times, and it helps reduce queues, which is maybe more important, right? We don't have as many pedestrians congregating on a corner if the cycle lengths are shorter. We keep that moving. MoDOT's done a lot of things for truckers in other states as far as reducing restrictions as far as driving hours and overweight restrictions. And then a number of transit systems are waiving the fees so people don't have to pay a fare to get on a bus. They're trying to minimize those opportunities for spreading the virus as much as possible. And finally, Pam, one more. So I'm hoping that this is a conversation that we have, that we can maybe come up with some ideas. Maybe it's just one. Maybe we come up with one idea. But what problems, opportunities, needs have been created or exacerbated by these shelter-in-place orders? What new issues are out there today that weren't there a month ago that people are having? And then are there things that we can do to help solve some of those needs? So maybe we can just kind of take this in halves or see where the discussion goes, but I'll throw that out there beyond what we've talked about here. What problems are you seeing in your communities, or are you seeing, just in general, that are out there that are new problems or problems that have been made a lot worse by everything that's going on?
Maybe I can start. This is Sajjad from My Vision. A piece of information. Thank you, by the way, Shawn. Like this is amazing information. Something that we saw that was quite interesting was the reduction in pedestrian signal compliance. So signal compliance, based on data that we're seeing, has actually reduced quite a bit. We're seeing cases where pedestrians are taking chances, and this is either related to the other point that you mentioned, what people are sort of avoiding pushing the pedestrian button, or just like traffic demand isn't aligned with sort of the cycle lengths and the traffic signal timing. So seems like no one's coming, and you check the video, and then the pedestrian checks, there's no one coming, and they start to pass through. And I think the dangerous bit there is that vehicle speeds are quite high in those cases as well too, where there's not a lot of traffic, but you see this car just whizzing through and creating a dangerous sort of near miss situation. So that was I think interesting to see as well.
So pedestrian compliance, and Catherine Cordum brought up something on chat which is related, and I've seen this anecdotally, is just speed. People are driving really fast, the roads are empty, and it maybe goes along with that cruising comment, right? So, right. We're seeing that kind of thing. So, yeah, okay. What other new things have you seen, or problems are you seeing out there that are facing people?
Shawn,
this is
Rudy.
Go ahead, Reed.
Okay.
Beverly, I haven't had a chance to congratulate you, so congratulations on winning your election.
Thank you. Mine's just really quick, and it's just one thing that I've noticed that, so on the Texas A&M University campus, the vast majority of the students are gone. They're down to, it's almost all online, but their transit has had to change some of their operations. At first, they were allowing only 30 students per vehicle, people per vehicle, and now it's down to 20. And then the driver would shut the doors and not allow anybody on. So I don't know how that's been dealt with in some of the other communities. The one thing that I saw was interesting is the campus is closed to all vehicles except for transit vehicles during the day. Well, it's still closed. And so if you're trying to get over there, I had to go over there Friday to pick up my son. I couldn't go through campus. So it was just frustrating because you have this asset now that you could use to get students in and out where people are trying to move out, but you couldn't use it because they hadn't altered that operational behavior. I mean, they hadn't changed that, even though we're absolutely no students on campus. So I don't know if other agencies are having to struggle with those kinds of things. They're not really making changes on the fly when they have a drastic change in the environment.
They're saying that transit agencies aren't adjusting their schedules, or are you saying roadway changes or transit route changes?
I guess it would be both. You know, what other experience have transit agencies dealt with the number of people on the buses, or maybe their routes, because their users have changed, or just the number of the users have changed. I don't know if I said that right.
Yeah, transit agencies, I think, are struggling right now because they're trying to deal with protecting the drivers. The ridership has changed on some of their heavy routes where you've got people that still need to get to work, right? Some of those that need more buses, some of the other routes, maybe nobody's taking the bus. So I think there's been a pretty drastic change in their demand, right? Their level of demand and what they need to do to serve that demand. And it happened overnight, right? So I think a lot of them are really, I feel bad. I'm very, I would say proud of, and I feel bad for the group that's here, because I know the struggles they're going through and trying to deal with this, and it's pretty overwhelming, frankly. Try to get them on top of it.
Hey, Shawn, one of the things that I was reading about earlier with respect to transit is not only are they just decimated in terms of ridership and things right now, but they're wondering, are people going to come back? Are people going to be scared? How long before it ramps up? As people adjust to the new normal, they're going to be scared to get back on the transit, and so that's another thing, is what happens next for a lot of these institutions that everybody relied on.
Yeah, absolutely. What else are you seeing? So, I mean, we're definitely seeing the need to social distance as you're out and stay physically away from each other. We're seeing a need, and we brought up with these drive-through. I mean, what else are you seeing, or issues are you seeing related to infrastructure? Somebody brought up the sidewalks are way too narrow, and yeah, absolutely. And that's where reclaiming some of the road space to make a wider sidewalk, in my mind, seems like a no-brainer. How you implement that, and with cones or whatever, that's one. And I guess I'll ask a question as far as implementation on some of these. In St. Louis, we've been trying to encourage the agencies to look at this. I think the concern might be like MET's compliance, right? I mean, you have to get a plan together, and you got to put the stuff. What tools and techniques might we have? You saw what Calgary did, but if we wanted to implement some of these in the streets in your community, what resources are available for a DOT to, especially if you're closing a road, that's easy enough, right? You close the road, but to maybe take a 4-lane road and do a temporary road diet type of a thing. And y'all are transportation professionals. That's something that you would be comfortable with sealing, or is there a better solution to be able to do that? Have any of you been? Oh, go ahead.
Shawn, this is Rudy. One of the things that when we looked at pedestrian safety, even under normal times, you don't expect a pedestrian. The unexpected pedestrian, the saying, always expect the pedestrian no matter where you are. That's what can happen. I remember I was up in Vermont one time in a blizzard, and driving along a side road, and all of a sudden there's a pedestrian in a blizzard. Just there he was. And you don't expect that. And in Wisconsin, just today or yesterday, a gentleman was walking down the road in a rural area and got hit by a pickup truck. So what we have now is speeds that are increasing and more pedestrians out there where they normally wouldn't be. Our streets, I've never seen so many people walking around our streets. There aren't many cars on the road, but still in areas where they didn't have pedestrians before, or a lot of them, and the speeds are picking up, and people are just you had that unexpected consequence of, oh, there's a pedestrian and I just hit him. So we have that thing is to educate the drivers and educate the pedestrians. Oh, there's no cars on the road, I can walk down the middle of the road. Oh, there's nobody on the road, so I can drive fast. So part of this is going to have to be education for folks. At this time, it's probably a short time, but in rural areas where people weren't on the road or bicycles weren't on the road, all of a sudden now you have more people out there and less cars and higher speeds. So that's something that we have to look at. And going back to the transit, while I have the mic, is in Milwaukee here, they only run on the weekend schedules. And again, it's very important to be able to predict when the buses are coming. So there's a change in schedules and people want to get to work, but now it's a weekend scheduled. So having it online is important, but some people don't have phones, but I guess most people do now. But and then we're getting on the buses in the back of the bus. The bus driver comes up and you get on in the back of the bus rather than in the front of the bus. And he doesn't open the door. And our drivers have been shielded for a number of years just with plexiglass, just for a safety standpoint. So there's a number of things. It's the unexpectedness that we have to watch out for. And one of the things that I want to have a seminar, I want to have one of these on, what is the effect of serious and fatal injuries during this pandemic? What has changed? Are the numbers going to go down? Certainly crashes are going to go down, but are fatals and serious injuries going to remain the same or not? Because a lot of your crashes, fatal crashes, are single vehicle run off the road at night. And if you have cruising and stuff like that, now you got teenagers out there and they're out there running the roads. And so that's what I want to do, is have a drop in a month or two to see what's happening to the crashes. So I think we need to be observing the crashes. The volumes are down. Talking to somebody in Tampa, they're down 50% in some of their traffic counts. So we have to educate, and enforcement is not, there's no enforcement now. So that's something we have to build in. And I like the idea of taking back some of the road diets, if we can do that.
I was gonna ask, I mean, what can we do that's like immediate, right? So Calgary, I asked Jen, I said, how long did it take y'all to figure that out? She said, well, that group could probably pull something like that off in about a week. Education can be of value. After Hurricane Maria, I had the opportunity to spend some time down in Puerto Rico, and the ITE group down there was telling me a story of how their pedestrian fatalities spiked really hard a couple months after. So right after Hurricane Maria, there was like no pedestrian fatalities because nobody could drive. But once they got the roads cleared, their pedestrian fatalities spiked really hard. They had the equivalent of a year's worth of fatalities in about a month. And she said, so we looked at it to figure out what's going on. And what was going on there was that they cleared the roads and they piled all the stuff up on the sidewalk. So everybody's walking the roads because they didn't have a place to walk in the sidewalk. And you combine that with everybody getting out and driving, it was just a recipe for disaster. So that required some education so they could get the debris cleared away. So there's some of that, but I guess, some of those answers might be if people aren't walking in the roads. And I guess I'm interested in that is how can you do a quick road conversion? Do we have tools that we've used someplace else? We do pop-up demonstrations. Those are usually for a day or maybe more, but how can we do some things really fast to get some of this stuff out in the field where it's really needed? Beyond closing the road. Closing the road's easy enough, but if we have a 4-lane road that really can be a 2-lane road and we can open up 12 feet of pedestrian space, how do you do that overnight? Does anybody have any ideas where you've seen that done successfully and safely, right? Because we don't want to compromise pedestrian safety in the middle of doing this either. Yeah, just a bunch of barrels, and maybe a bunch of orange barrels is the best solution, right?
And we do that in work zones all the time, where if we're taking away the sidewalk, we just put up barrels, move the signs, get the traffic over, and pedestrians get out on the street. In DC, that's kind of commonplace. The building owners are doing some renovation on the building, so they're closing the sidewalk. And as a result, they have to have some sort of, they take part of the roadway. So that's done in work zones all the time. And I was up in Wausau, Wisconsin, and that's what they did a couple of years ago. They were redoing the downtown square and just close the sidewalk and put people out on the street. But using barrels and cones, and certainly we have enough barrels and cones in the United States to do that. And it's a quick, easy thing to do. The people are separated in doing it. So I think we have that, and that's done like for hurricanes, the disaster relief, but it takes emergency preparedness to be able to, somebody think of that. Let's take that over and make it available. Usually it's planned ahead, but you could go out and close any downtown area street in any city with cones.
Right.
Just go down and put them down.
If I could add from a signal timing perspective and calming traffic, I think there's an opportunity there. Again, like in a lot of cases with these reductions in volumes, I don't think coordination is even required. So allowing at locations where detection enables, allowing intersections to operate in free mode would sort of break down, like create sort of at least some stops as vehicles are going through and sort of create a temporary, I would say, calming the traffic. I don't know if anyone else has experience with this or.
Would this be
Yeah, so I guess, go ahead. Were you saying, suggesting that we use a shorter cycle length, or just let the signals run free?
Just let the signals run free, and it's going to naturally break down the coordination. I think in a lot of cases, the coordination has been designed for like passing through a significant amount of volume, and right now with the lower volume, it means higher speed. So that could temporarily sort of help with creating more artificial stops as the vehicles are passing through in order to lower down the speed.
Yeah, so and Catherine, if you all aren't on chat, Catherine's typing away. So Catherine, if you can hear us, thank you. Super good comments on there. And she brought up another potential solution, which we're working on a major design build in St. Louis right now, and we thought, well, you know, this is going to certainly help our maintenance traffic, be able to knock some of this stuff out without a lot of people on the road. And she said, can we, since the streets are pretty empty, can we repaint our crosswalks, right? So I think there's some of that that's out there. But I think it sounds like there's some ability to go out and to do some of these closures or just some signal timing. For you traffic engineers that are on the call, any concerns with setting up fake work zones to give people space to work? I mean, you know, if there's somebody that's going to pose this, it's going to be somebody who's worried about liability, right? Well, what if somebody gets run over? Am I liable because I did something that maybe isn't specifically authorized in the MBTCD? I'll tell you that I don't know if there's anybody on the national committee on this call, but the people who wrote the MBTCD probably weren't envisioning the situation when they put that into place, right? What do y'all feel? I mean, is what we're talking about, is it reasonable, or does anybody have any like major safety concerns with this?
Yes, this is Brian Moen. I think, you know, closing areas for pedestrians would be good, but probably still need to look at the context of what you're talking about. If it is a downtown area where maybe your prevailing speeds are normally 30, 35 miles an hour, but I know for us in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the suburban context that we're in, a lot of our multi-lane roadways are 40, 45 miles an hour, and I can't envision taking one of those lanes and making it head if I've got a 45 mile an hour speed limit next to it. As much as I would like to do, I would be really concerned maybe about doing something like that. I know we're going through and modifying our signal timing. And then we've been taking advantage on the construction end where normally if we got to do pavement repairs, we'll do a lane at a time and just close 9 to 3:30. And now we've been letting those stay out 24/7 and, maybe taking 2 lanes down to get and having 1 lane pass by because there's still plenty of capacity just to have, one direction or of a 6-lane arterial closing down 2 lanes in one direction. It still functions perfectly fine.
Okay.
Wishing we had lots of roundabouts now instead of signals. It'd be easier and it'd be a lot less costly when we're all trying to figure out budget-wise how we're going to take care of this stuff when there's no tax dollars coming in. Those things are kind of starting to hit now. What's going to happen to our operations and so forth.
Brian, this is Rudy. Can you readjust your signal? You have centralized control of your signals where you can
Yes,
change
we
the
do.
signal timing?
Yep, we have centralized control.
So you could, that would be relatively easy for you, or it has been.
Correct. Yep. It would be easy to do. We waited last week. We talked about it, kind of started to set a process up. And now that it certainly looks like it's going to last much longer, we're actually implementing that this week.
Pam, do we have a place to collect? A bunch of cities are doing a bunch of things. You can look at Twitter or different places. I mean, does ITE have because a lot of this stuff's going to happen really quick, right? We went to St. Louis County yesterday with a plan to take back some street space, and they were going to be uncomfortable with it. We were sure, and I said, let's put it out there, because today they might think this is kind of out there, but when 20 other cities are doing it, they might turn around and say, okay, what was that plan you had, right? It'd be nice for some of these things that they're doing in Dallas, right? So maybe the taking the street space doesn't work for you, but the signal retiming does. I mean, what is everybody doing? And if we had a clearinghouse of that information, that might help. And trying to, stuff that you're doing in Calgary is great. Like how much did that cost? Do you have any problems? So
Jason DeGray, the chair of the advocacy committee, has sent an email to collect this kind of information out to our councils and committees. I believe there's also been some conversations on e-community as well. So we are looking to collect this information. As I see it on Twitter, I will also keep track of it so that we can at some point bring it all together. But the advocacy committee is looking to spearhead that.
Yeah, and I think,
sorry, this is Mark.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So this is Mark. APWA sent something out this morning, and they've been acting as a central clearinghouse for a lot of different things, some of which we're talking about, but also just other infrastructure and non-transportation related. And they have something similar to like our community, but they basically just put it on like the face of their web page, saying here's all the resources, here's sharing of best practices, here's a link to our community forum, and it's very simple, but it's also just done in a very clean, neat, cohesive way without people having to search and make them work for it. And that's just, it's a good practice. And so if you want to check that out as an example of something to perhaps emulate, we could probably do better by looking at that. And there's some other professional organizations that are doing the same in their industry.
Yeah, and Mark reminded me, Shawn, that Jeff sent out a note today, and he's looking to create a resource page as well. He's going to be working with Zach on that. So we should.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, when I first got on the board, it's been a while now, it was like 2 years to get a document out. And then when Jeff came, we got that down to like 3 or 4 months. We probably need to get something out in a week, So
we turned this idea around in less than 24 hours, this virtual drop-in, so.
Yeah, so very, very much appreciated.
I want to share something else. you're talking about maintenance before, and that's, I'm on the consulting side, so I'm not on the municipal side, but a lot of what's going on right now reminds me of the 1989 earthquake that we had here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And there's two things that I'll quickly share. One is the Bay Bridge was gone for a month. It was out for a month while they had to do the repairs. You take out the major artery that serves a good deal of the traffic, what happens? Well, they did 18 months of maintenance on the bridge in 1 month. So it was very aggressive, and they advanced that. And people like shifted. People were using ferries and transit and doing all sorts of things. And everyone was like, how do we get them to stay on this? How do we, encourage these? But there was no information campaign. There was nothing that really encouraged people to, keep those good habits that they had all, had to do for a month. And then, within a month after everything was back up and running, things were just back to normal, and it was like nothing had ever happened. So there's the education part of it and the maintenance part of it are things that I think we can be leaders on. And, we look at hurricanes and other types of disasters and the lessons learned from those types of things and apply those and say, how can we do better? But how do we get the word out and act as ambassadors in our communities with the public so that, this is a whole new, paradigm shift that we'd like to see maintained in many respects. So there's so many lessons learned. We have to draw from what we already know and not try and reinvent the wheel. What did we do before? And then how would we do it better this time?
Yeah, that's very helpful. I think those past lessons can serve us really well, and I think that's part of this drop-in is what are those lessons and what things can we do quickly. Any other thoughts from anybody else in the group as far as, again, problems you're seeing or ideas that you've got or things you've seen that have worked in a different situation?
One question we've been asking ourselves, is what is this going to mean afterwards? City of Frisco, where I'm at, we're a growing community. We've got some jobs that are ready to bid on some road widenings coming up. And now it's like, well, if this doesn't rebound and we don't have the volume, do we really need to go do that widening? And then there's a counter argument to that is like, well, we may really see prices drop. It might be the best price construction prices we get in a while, to maybe we need to go get some things built, that we can.
Right.
And I don't know what the right answer is there.
Yeah, there's definitely a big unknown for where we land coming out of this, right? Are we going to come back to a roaring economy and back to where we were, or are we going to come back to something different? For sure. Okay. Any last thoughts, suggestions, ideas? Pam, if somebody wakes up in the middle of the night with the $10,000, the $1 million idea, how do they get that to you?
Well, you can email me. I am also going to be posting this recording on the all-member forum, so you can reply to the all-member forum.
Let's keep the conversation going with what people are doing, with what ideas and thoughts you have. I think we're in a world of doing things. It's not by the books. I teach at WashU, and I had this conversation when the scooters were there. I think most of us on this call were taught engineering that you go to the book and you find page 462 and there's a table and you look up the answer's in the book. And I asked the students if they could do a little research and help me find the book on how to implement scooters. And we came up with, there's not a scooter book, right? It doesn't exist. So I said, well, that's the exciting thing for you. You get to figure it out because it's not in a book. And I think the situation we're in right now isn't in a book. It's problem solving and working through the issues. And I think we can do that a lot more effectively together as an ITE family as if we're trying to do it on our own, for sure. So appreciate y'all being part of this call and part of this conversation. But let's not let it end here, because I tell Pam asked like last Thursday for my PowerPoint. I didn't send it to her this morning because I'm like, every time I go on Twitter or something, I find something new and different. So I don't want to send this to you because it's changing so fast and so many new neat ideas are coming out. We'll be at a different place 2 days from now than we are now. I'm sure of that. So yeah, let's just keep that conversation going. Pam, I don't know if you had anything else you needed for a closing.
I don't, except to thank everybody for joining today. We have 2 more this week, one tomorrow with Aaron Skimpson from Myovision. And then on Thursday, our international president, Randy McCourt, will be speaking. And then we have 2 scheduled for next week, one on Tuesday, I believe, with PTV. Unfortunately, I don't know what the topic is. I'm just scheduling them as I can. And Thursday, there'll be one with a Shawn Leight on signals as service. I am looking for people who are looking to convene one of these. As you can see, it's quite easy. You don't need to have a PowerPoint. The last 2 presenters have, and that's fine if you want to use something as reference, or if you just want to come and speak for 5 to 7 minutes on a topic. We're happy to entertain that topic and get something like this set up. So I would leave that all for you to contemplate. And as I said, again, this is going to be recorded and you'll be able to find it on our YouTube channel as well as on the All Member Forum. So, feel free to circulate this to people who may have missed it and that you think might be interested. And other than that, thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.